Hello and welcome to a special episode of USA Today's The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. This is Banned Books Week. It's a week that highlights how a few loud voices have shaped what kinds of books are pulled from schools and library shelves. Who gets the final word, not on which books should be read, but on access? And what's been the impact on those caught in a fight they didn't start, our teachers and librarians? Here to discuss the banning of books is USA Today books reporter Clare Mulroy. Thanks for joining me, Clare.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start out by asking you to give me a little background on Banned Books Week. How did this tradition get started?
So, Banned Books Week launched in 1982 as a response to a sudden urge of challenges in libraries, bookstores, schools. In the words of the American Library Association, it's an effort to draw national attention to the harms of censorship. So, you'll see readers and librarians sharing their favorite banned books during this week. And here at USA Today, we're publishing a story every single day about this landscape, what it looks like, and how it's impacting readers.
Let's break it down, starting with what it means to ban a book in the first place.
Yeah, so these definitions are super important, but they kind of differ depending on who you ask. The ALA, who is a founding member of the Banned Books Week Coalition, defines a book challenge as any attempt to remove or restrict materials, and a ban as the actual removal. But PEN America, one of the week's sponsors, defines it as any action taken against a title based on its content. I spoke to PEN America's Freedom to Read director, and she told me that the key point here is access. So if a book was on the shelves at one point and no longer is there, even if it's only for weeks or months at a time, there is a restriction on that access. This can be banned from a variety of places. Classroom curriculum, meaning it's compulsory, so every student has to learn from it. But it could also be from libraries, public or school libraries, where picking up that book in the first place is voluntary. There are some who argue that, kids and readers, adults alike, can still buy books on Amazon or at local bookstores. But it's important to remember that there is still a barrier. Not everyone has the financial means or the transportation means to access those places.
As you said, there are a couple of big players in this national conversation on two sides of the aisle here. You mentioned PEN America, an advocacy nonprofit that fights for the right of writers and journalists to have freedom of expression. And then there's Moms for Liberty, a political group that in part advocates against books they dismiss as woke. Can you give us a primer of their origins and what their arguments are?
A data point from the ALA that I find particularly interesting is that 72% of demands to censor books in schools and public libraries come from organized movements. The ALA, of course, standing for the American Libraries Association. Groups like Moms for Liberty, as well as government entities with elected officials and board members. You'll often see the words parental rights come up with these groups advocating for more oversight into curriculum and shelves. But then nonprofits like PEN America disagree that these groups should be influencing decisions for all students. On our site today, we've got a Q&A where we asked both PEN America and Moms for Liberty the same question. So you can go check that out now and read their stances in their own words.
Claire, this year's banned books theme is 1984. That's, of course, George Orwell's famous novel that depicted a world governed by censorship and authoritarianism. Help us dig into the theme. What does the book actually say about censorship?
So this is something we've seen from both sides of the political aisle, and people have used it as kind of shorthand for repression in general. But what the term Orwellian actually refers to is language as a means of control, especially when it comes to propaganda. In 1984, Orwell writes about the harm of totalitarian regimes and the ways that they succeed through manipulating language. And clearly, this is something that people are interested in dipping back into. We've even seen 1984 reemerge on our own book list this year.
So, what titles have been banned so far this year? Give us a taste of the list.
The American Libraries Association and PEN America track their data differently, but I'll give you a snapshot of both. On the ALA's 2024 list, we see top titles that have been regularly challenged for years, like All Boys Aren't Blue, Genderqueer, The Bluest Eye, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. On PEN America's list, which tracks from the 2024 to 2025 school year, this includes A Clockwork Orange, Breathless, and Sold. And the PEN America spokesperson that I chatted with told me the reason that you don't see many of those commonly banned books on the top list this year is because they've largely remained off the shelf since they were first targeted. Titles with or about characters of color or from LGBTQ communities are disproportionately targeted. But what PEN America has seen this year is kind of a widening, more broadly targeting any kind of sexual content, whether that's sexual experience or sexual violence.
Claire, are we seeing stark regional differences on the types of books that are being banned, or is it just red state versus blue state?
PEN America publishes a map every year of the states with the highest number of school book bans, and we're kind of seeing a continuation of the same pattern this year, the highest states being Florida, Texas, and Tennessee. But they also tracked this year 590 instances of book bans at the Department of Defense schools, which span 7 states, 2 territories, and 11 countries.
And what kinds of reactions are you hearing and seeing from teachers and librarians?
One of our big projects this year was talking to teachers from all around the country to get their experiences, and they really range. I mean, we talked to a school librarian in Louisiana who faced doxing and death threats after she spoke out at a public library hearing. We chatted with one DoD teacher, former DoD teacher, who left the education system after increased banning of materials in accordance with Trump administration orders. Another teacher we spoke with in North Carolina received a notice from administration that she was going to have to scan every book in her classroom library, part of a new state law. She feels that it's belittling and says that she doesn't understand, if she's to be trusted with kids in these classrooms, why her book selections aren't. But then we talked to some teachers in states that aren't as affected by book bans, or they're not as frequent in these states. And we're seeing that some of these teachers are using this as kind of a real world teaching example and a learning opportunity. And one California teacher we spoke with hosts a banned books project every single year, and she has kids investigate why a book was banned and then write a persuasive essay, agreeing or disagreeing with that decision.
Where does this conversation go next?
Something that PEN Americas has stressed this year is that, although the number of book bans has declined this year, what they're seeing is kind of a normalization of book bans. Free speech advocates are really sounding the alarm on this, and I don't really see that stopping anytime soon.
Claire, if you could name one big takeaway from this week that you want our listeners and viewers to walk away with, what would that be?
I think that it's important to listen to teachers who are on the front line of this and listen to what their experiences have been with parents in their community. A lot of the teachers we spoke with say that they have, had books challenged by outside groups, but really haven't had many issues with parents in their community, parents of students in their classroom. So I think listening to teachers on this who are in those states that have the highest number of book bans, I think that's important for readers to know and to listen to.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights on this, Claire. It's good to have you on the excerpt.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.